obviously a timely choice. Later in the opening session, we will discuss an asset-based development approach to crisis response in communities. Several of our workshop tracks will focus on how to be sure we are identifying and engaging people who might be most affected by a crisis like the pandemic and its economic impacts. At the college, for example, we had to take many extra measures to support the digital needs of our students after we sent them home last spring, knowing that many Appalachian and rural households do not have good internet access. As other examples, at this summit, there will be a track on working with opportunity youth, young people who are not engaged in education or the workforce, and one on grassroots organizing in a crisis that explores how to approach people through their own agency and strengths rather than seeing them only as clients to be served. This year, we have people attending from Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, Mississippi, and Alaska. An attendee from Alaska is a first for us, and here's a picture of the mountains in Valdez, Alaska, for all of you to see. All of us have mountains we are proud of, but I'm afraid Alaska's win any competition. We've learned something about leadership during crises here at the college this year, facing a triple threat to our health and well-being. There's the pandemic, of course, that has already taken the lives of nearly 200,000 Americans, more than 1,000 of them here in Kentucky. And education and community, our mission and our identity, are inherently social. So how to proceed without undue risk is a huge challenge. There's also a financial crisis associated with the pandemic because of the impact it has had on many areas of the economy. This impacts our students greatly, but thankfully has hit the college less hard because of federal and state stimulus measures and the quick recovery of the stock market. But you only have to look around at the small businesses in this town and many other towns throughout our region to see that the overall recovery of people's financial well-being will take a long time still. And finally, the crisis in race relations, which has been brought to the fore just in time for the potential political crisis associated with the upcoming elections. And we can conclude that 2020 has developed into the absolute worst year in the life of anyone living. I hope that no succeeding years come even close to equaling its toxicity and challenges. And I haven't even mentioned the climate-related challenges because they've been less impactful here in the region so far anyway. But at least you can say that 2020 has been full of learning opportunities in relation to leadership. Here are a few things I've learned, and maybe you've already learned similar things in your own leadership responsibilities. First, get everyone involved. Everyone has something to offer, and no one person alone can get it all right. Plus, people appreciate being part of the solution. Second, you can't communicate too much. Social media has a mind and dynamic of its own, and you have to counter it constantly with real information. Third, keep learning. And don't be afraid if you have to change your mind or direction when new scientific information comes along or new understandings of complex social phenomena emerge. Fourth, being political or ideological doesn't help, and it causes needless alienation and distraction from how much we need each other to get through this. Fifth, tell the truth. People expect it and respond well to knowing the challenges and how they will impact them personally. Finally, and this may be the most important, support those others in leadership who are following those 5 approaches that I've mentioned. We're lucky to have a governor in Kentucky who does all of that. And locally as well, we have mayors and our local public health authority taking these approaches. And we're glad to partner with them and work together at the leadership level on the challenges. And they need as much support as we can give them to counter those who are trying to do the opposite of some of these recommendations. Climbing down off my soapbox now and returning to the enjoyable task of welcoming you, we all have the opportunity and obligation to bring our contributions to our communities during these times of crisis. We hope this leadership summit will help you raise up your own gifts of leadership. We appreciate that you've chosen to join us during this unusual time, and we hope you can join us and your fellow community leaders in person on campus next year. I also want to join Donna in thanking the great staff of the Brushy Fork Institute, as well as the whole staff of the Division of Strategic Initiatives here. They are essential to running a meeting of this sort, and they work very hard. And I can add my thanks to Donna too, who works just as hard as all of them, maybe harder. So thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you well in this great meeting. Thank you.
Yay, thank you, President Roloff, for those welcoming words. And so we do have this image of Valdez, Alaska, which has these beautiful mountains. And so a little later, as we're talking about this asset-based recovery framework, what I want us to think about with Valdez is, you know, this is when we talk about resurgence, you're going to hear the term resurgence in that framework. And the fact that we are able to connect from Appalachia in with someone who is actually all the way up in Alaska, even though if she's up at this session this morning, because it's quite early there. You know, this is a piece, when we talk about resurgence, we're going to be talking about the pieces of things that we've learned that we want to keep. And so Brushy Fork in the future, maybe thinking about how do we maintain the opportunity to bring in people from across the nation and maybe even around the world. We had a conversation last night about how there are so many similarities in Romania. Andrea, who is from Romania, shared that in the mountains of Romania, there are great similarities to some of the things that are happening in the Appalachian Mountains. And so just listen for that as we go through our conversation. So we welcome, if she's here, the person from Valdez, but let's move on. And Daniel is now going to share with us a little bit about what our schedule is going to look like.
Hello, everyone. So this morning, we have our opening session, as you are currently experiencing. We will take a break at 12 o'clock p.m., in which you can grab a bite to eat, stretch your legs, and then we will reconvene at 1 o'clock in our Block 1 workshop tracks, which we will discuss which blocks are in which tracks soon. We will adjourn today at 4 o'clock p.m. And in the evening, there is an optional session with Dr. Melissa Carver called Finding Balance Under Pressure. And so feel free to join us for an opportunity to network and also learn from Dr. Carver about ways to find that balance under pressure and to practice mindfulness and things of that nature. Tomorrow, we will meet again at 9 a.m. for our Block 1 workshop tracks. We will then again take a break at 12 p.m. and then reconvene for our Block 2 workshop tracks at 1. And then we will finish up for the day at 4 p.m. And then on Friday, we will start off the day with our 9 a.m. Block 2 workshop tracks, have our break at noon, and then we will have our closing session at 1 p.m., which will wrap up by around 3 p.m. And so going into what tracks are in which blocks, we have our Block 1 workshop tracks, which are from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock on September 16th, and then the morning on September 17th from 9 a.m. to noon. And those tracks are Adaptive Nonprofit Leadership in a Crisis with Monica Jones, who was with us from Arietta College in Ohio. We also have Preparing for Leadership Transition with Carolyn Carpenter, who is a consultant who has worked in the foundation world for decades and currently lives in Colorado. And then the third track in our Block 1 is Grassroots Organizing in a Crisis with Jennifer Wells, who is with us from West Virginia and is an organizer with Community Change. And then moving on to our Block 2 workshop tracks, which are beginning on the 17th from 1 to 4 and wrapping up on the 18th from 9 to noon. We have fundraising strategies during social distancing with Lee Ellen Martin, who is the executive director of the Explorium in Lexington, Kentucky. We also have organizing and engaging opportunity youth with Hassan Davis, who is the former Commissioner of Juvenile Justice for the Commonwealth, Vice Chair of the Federal Advisory Committee and a Juvenile Justice, and an organizational consultant and hope dealer currently residing in Paint Lake, Kentucky. And last but certainly not least, we have a big group for our final track, which is Building a Local Community Movement, with Dr. Vaughn Grisham, who is the Director Emeritus of the McLean Institute for Public Service and Community Engagement at the University of Mississippi. We also have his wife, Sandy Grisham, who is an author and retired sociology professor, both of them coming from to us from Mississippi. And with them is Vanda Rice and Amy Dunsweiler, who are co-founders of Stay and Clay in Manchester, Kentucky. And now we're going to hear some Zoom tips from Andrea, I believe. And so feel free to let me know when to change those slides for you.
All right, thank you so much, Daniel. Yeah, you can go ahead. All right, so good morning. Some of you joined us yesterday at the early bird session, and I already went through these, but for everybody who is new and basically hasn't heard this spiel, get ready. We're not doing this because we assume that you don't know Zoom or how to use it, but we just want to make sure that we're bringing everybody on the same page and we all have the same ability to interact with each other during the next 2 or 3 days of the Brushy Fork Leadership Summit. All right, so let me start with the first and the easiest probably Zoom tip that we have for you. So as you're currently looking at your desktop screen, on the bottom part, you have a black toolbar where you can find the mute and start video button. So if there is not a crossed line, a red cross line over the microphone where it says mute, that means that you are unmuted and we can hear what you're saying. Now, I will like to encourage you to not get upset or offended if one of our hosts mutes you while we have a main speaker going over a presentation or facilitating. It's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's because most likely you are producing some sort of background noise that is interfering with the overall experience. Whenever we are in breakout rooms, or if you have something to contribute, feel free to then unmute yourself. The start stop video function, it's a great option to use whenever you need to step away from your desk or wherever you are in your home location and so on. We encourage you to use that stop video button, especially when we are taking breaks. Instead of just exiting the session overall, just use that stop video and mute button to just walk away from your space, and then whenever we reconvene, just again, start your video and we'll know that you are back with us. If you're using an iPad or tablet of some sorts, or even a smartphone, and you are using the Zoom app, the interface is a little bit different. Be aware that the tab at the bottom with all the functions and all the buttons is going to disappear from time to time. So just tap your screen and the toolbar will just pop up again. Daniel, can you move to the next one? Great. The next function that I want to go over is the rename function. Maybe some of us are using somebody else's or an organization's Zoom account, and we are not showing up with our real name or the name that we would like to be we would like to be addressed by. So if that's the case, on your own video chat where you can see yourself, so in the little box, if you go on the top right corner, you can see 2 buttons. It says mute, and then there's a little button that has 3 dots on it. That is the more options button. And you'll click on that. And as you see in this picture, in the drop-down menu, you will have a button that says rename. Click on that and you will be able to use the rename function to put in whatever name you'd like to, or we also encourage you to use that function to let us know what are the preferred pronouns that you would like us to use during the Leadership Summit. Great, let's see the next tip. All right, so in the next thing that we're gonna talk about is the chat function. And the chat function, you can find it very central on that toolbar that I was talking about, right between, I have here on my own screen, polls and share screen, but that's probably because I'm a co-host right now, should be next to participants. Anyway, if you click on the chat screen, many of you already used it so far to introduce yourself. So very much like an email, you can either message all the attendees that are currently on the Zoom, on this Zoom session, or you can just basically message somebody individually. Just click on the button that says everyone, and then there is going to be another drop-down menu popping up with the name of all the attendees. So just click on the attendee that you would like to message. Be aware that while the conversation is private, the host can download and see all the conversations that are happening on the Zoom chat. So just be mindful of the conversations that you're having in private in case you don't want the host to read it, just so you guys know. All right, next tip. Awesome, so this, I think this will be a very helpful hint for us. So you can change the video layout of the Zoom session. You can toggle between speaker view and gallery gallery view while the screen is being shared, or even while there's no screen sharing going on. So right now that speaker view button is at my top right corner in the main session. And I'm not exactly sure if you guys can see the layout as it is in the second image that I have here on the screen. But if you can see that particular view, if you just toggle between all those little buttons at the top, then you'll be able to adjust the way that you see whoever is speaking, or just seeing everyone, all the attendees. Just be mindful that in that second picture that I posted here, where there's the sidebar with all the attendees, if you click on the first button on the top of the sidebar, that little line there, as you can see, it's circled in green. That is a minimizer, so be aware that the videos will disappear and you will only be seeing the name of whoever is the main speaker currently. So play with it. I encourage you to play with it just so you can see what kind of video layout works for you. Great. Next tip, please. All right, so let's see how we can interact with each other during these following sessions. So if you click on the button that says participants in your black toolbar at the bottom, you will have a sidebar that will open up, and you will list the names of all the attendees, and it will tell you how many attendees are there. On the, as you go down that sidebar towards the bottom, you will see all, sorry about that. You'll see all these buttons that say raise hands, yes, no, go faster, go slower, so on. We encourage you to use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to contribute in a way. The host and the speakers will be able to see that you have a raised hand, and they will call on you to contribute whatever you had to add to the sessions. If you click on the more button there, you can even like indicate that you're stepping away, or that you're needing a break, or send a thumbs up or thumbs down. Now there's another way you can do a thumbs up. I saw a couple of you guys use this function earlier. Going back to the main screen, in the bottom toolbar, there's the reactions button, and you can do a hand clap, or you can do a thumbs up reaction. But be aware that if you have Zoom version 5.2 or higher, you'll be able to see more than 2 reactions. You'll be able to see a heart, a laughing emoji, a shocked emoji, and a celebration emoji. Feel free to use those buttons, but if somebody has a version of Zoom that is lower than 5.2, then they will not be able to see those interactions. Can we practice that? Can you guys give me like a thumbs up with those reactions? Great, awesome, awesome, awesome. Great, let's move to the next one. And I believe this is the last tip that I have for you guys. Yeah, so the share screen button is again at the bottom of your screen, and it is highlighted in green. It says share screen. And you might not use this, maybe you will during a breakout session. So be aware that if you use the share screen function in a breakout room, the Zoom will not automatically just display everything that's on your screen. You will have to select the particular window that you would like the other attendees to see. So let's say you want to share your internet browser window. Well, you will have to click that specific internet browser window for others to see. Then click share, and be mindful that the toolbar at the bottom will actually move on the top side of the screen, and that's where you will look for when you want to stop sharing your screen. That's where you'll have a red button, as you can see in the picture, and it says stop share. So just click on that, and everything will go back to the initial layout. So these are all the tips I had for you. I hope they're somewhat helpful and kind of bring you everybody on the same page. And I will pass this on to whatever's next. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And if folks do have any kind of technical issues, please feel free to put into the chat, and we will try to help you with those issues. In your participant guide that you would have received by email, there also are phone numbers that you can call. We could probably put those in the chat for you as well if you are having technical problems. And so the 3 folks who are going to be providing the technical assistance are Andrea and Erica and Daniel. So if you chat message any of those 3 folks, then we can get help to you. So we want to acknowledge, before we move on to our opening presentation, we want to acknowledge a few of the organizations that have sponsored the Leadership Summit this year. So, oh good, here we go. We do have a slide of that, excellent. So we have been sponsored by the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky and the Appalachian Impact Fund. They have sponsored some scholarships for us. The Berea College Appalachian Fund has helped with sponsoring the Building a Local Community Movement workshop track, so that we've been able to bring some teams to that workshop track. The Mountain Association has given us, this is formerly known as MASIF, so their name has changed to the Mountain Association, and they have provided some sponsorships as well for scholarships and for some workshop track support. And then Berea College Strategic Initiatives has really stepped up and helped us with planning and with providing some support staff to help us run this online event, as we have found that support, having that support staff has been a really important part. It takes more people to run an event online, we've found out, than to run it live. So I think now we want to switch over to sharing my screen, Daniel. So I will do that. And we want to take some time to talk about this framework for reclaiming community assets during a crisis. And so I was introduced to this framework as part of a webinar that I did with the Tamarack Institute out of Canada. And I felt like that this is something that is really important to share with communities, because when we're in a crisis, we can feel like things are really falling apart. But if we learn to recognize the gifts that come to us during a crisis, then maybe we can build on those. So there are 3 stages that communities go through when there is a crisis that occurs, according to this model from the Tamarack Institute. The first stage is crisis, the second stage is discovery, and the next stage is resurgence. So crisis, what happens when a community is in crisis? And I think we're probably all going to recognize this a little bit. Crisis is really marked by this flurry of activity. There is an incessant need to be doing something to resolve issues rather than slowing down and being reflective. And during this time, we may often see some like random acts of kindness. So if we think about some of the things that happened during COVID response in our communities, people were making masks. They were going out and getting groceries for elderly folks who may not otherwise have been able to get out to buy their groceries because of safety issues. People were buying meals for frontline medical workers. And so we were seeing these acts of kindness. There's also a recreation or recreation of live events as virtual events, with the thought that, well, this is going to be pretty temporary. So, you know, we can, this all feels kind of new and a little bit uncomfortable, but we can recreate some of the things that we do in our communities and just try to do it in a way that is either digital, online, socially distanced. And so people are willing to embrace that little bit of discomfort in order to continue to have some of those types of events that are important to our lives. And these are things like church services, concerts and events that might be happening in a community. And so you may have seen other types of events that were recreated in a virtual way in your communities. Even family get-togethers, some people were doing that. But it's all done within that, okay, we're pulling together and we're going to make this happen because this is just going to be short-lived, but we're still going to hang on to these community events that we do. And then people during crisis are also seeking answers. And usually they're seeking these answers from systems and from institutions. This might be through government leaders. It may be through their church. It may be through educational institutions, from professionals and scientists, and from the news. And during this crisis time, there can actually be a lot of confusion and even conflicting messages because everybody is on a learning curve during a crisis. The news tends to be saturated with the crisis issue. So how many people sat in front of your televisions and watched where New York was the epicenter of the COVID crisis for a while? You know, and we were seeing Governor Cuomo's briefings. And so we may have been glued to the television, even though we're not in New York, to kind of try to learn what we could learn about what was happening in New York. And as that's happening, other events may be falling to the wayside, other newsworthy events, even though they might be important to know. And so there's this focus in the news on this thing. People can also feel during the crisis time a sense of a loss of connection. And that loss of connection to each other can even create the scarcity mindset that develops when people feel like that they're alone in this and that they have to really look out for themselves. And so, how many people here who had trouble finding toilet paper? I mean, that was the big joke, remember, at the beginning of the COVID crisis? You know, everybody was buying up these loads of toilet paper and paper towels and the hand sanitizer, those types of things that we felt like we needed to have to protect ourselves. And we all had this scarcity mindset. Businesses and organizations closed without warning. And so that was a little bit scary for people during this crisis time. And so people felt isolated. And especially in rural places, people can feel abandoned as the news focuses primarily on urban areas. And so all these typical patterns that we've had for connection in our communities are gone. And we find ourselves in what could feel a little bit like a foreign landscape when it comes to the patterns that we've had before in our communities. We just cannot gather the way that we used to gather. We can't interact the way we used to interact. And so, if a community comes out of that crisis mode, and I think we may be seeing a little bit of this now, they move into this mode of discovery. So as challenges of something like this pandemic continue over the longer term, community members kind of move out of that flurry. So we may be seeing fewer of these random acts of kindness, even though they're still happening out there, but maybe they're not front and center. But people are beginning to see patterns, and they begin to recognize how some of the patterns that have existed in our communities previously may have exacerbated that crisis for some populations. They realize that some of the social structures that we have, some of the lack of resources or other factors might have made that crisis worse. And even as they are seeing these changing and challenging patterns, they may also begin to identify new habits of connection that have developed. There might be new ways of exchanging goods and services. We're ordering online. We're getting our groceries through pickup. We're having our food delivered to us from restaurants rather than going inside to eat. And they also, in that regard, may be finding new ways to support people who need some extra support during a time of crisis like this. Those people who may be unable to get out to get groceries and that type of thing. And so they recognize the patterns of where that exists, and they recognize the ways to serve those people. And then, so we still see people continuing to do things and connect with ways of producing things for themselves. So how many people in this meeting may have received sourdough starter from a friend? That's a thing, that a pattern of producing our own food at home that has emerged from this. And so, yeah, give us a thumbs up if you've received something like that, or if you've had a friend who planted Victory Garden. Victory Gardens became a thing. And so, you know, how many people have received zucchini by now, for example, from a friend's Victory Garden, or fresh tomatoes, or whatever is in that Victory Garden. And so as people care for each other, these community connections can emerge, and they emerge kind of naturally, but we have to be intentional about recognizing them. And so people might be beginning to shift away from that scarcity mentality that we mentioned earlier. And hopefully what we see is that people begin to develop a newfound confidence that when we recognize these patterns and connections and begin to intentionally develop them, we realize that we have the power to make changes in our communities that will support systems that are more equitable and solutions that are more equitable. And so at that point, we are positioned to move into what we're calling resurgence. So we're learning these things in our communities, that these intentional homegrown actions can become normalized and become part of the way that we operate. Melissa Newman talked a little bit, if people were in the early bird session yesterday, she talked a little bit about how all these stories of hope that could come out in a community, and these could be stories of hope that come out of crisis, actually start to change the mindset of a community and start to develop a sense of hope that actually impact and support community development. Resurgence is a little bit like that. Resurgence is a little bit like recognizing that pattern that by offering the Brushy Fork Leadership Summit online this year, we actually opened the opportunity for people from across the nation to interact with folks from Appalachia and for us to interact with them and to learn from each other in a broader context. And so we start to recognize these things and intentionally say, we want to do this again in the future, or we want to maintain this. So this kind of hope can inspire action among community members, and community members can begin to recognize gifts that all the people in their community can bring. And based on giving people the opportunity to offer these gifts and to share them with each other, people foster new connections or strengthen old connections. And they reclaim the role in using gifts from everybody in the community to respond to community issues. They recognize what a community can do for itself, and also, importantly, what a community might not be able to do for itself and when it might need outside resources. And then the community, if they recognize their internal gifts, as well as the need for some external inputs, they recognize how to integrate those external resources with those internal gifts that communities bring. And when they recognize and acknowledge that, then they move beyond what often is seen as a scarcity mentality in communities. And so that really starts to get people raising those resources, whether they be money or efforts from people from inside, which avoids having to relinquish power to many of those outside organizations that may be bringing resources into your community. And the communities are even able to describe what is it that they need from outside resources and how do they want to use that, so that they hold those organizations that are coming in from the outside accountable to staying in their lane in the community. That is, to recognizing that any of the efforts that happen in that community need to be community driven, and the resources need to be driven by how those resources are used needs to be driven by the community as well. And a lot of these connections and recognitions are developed simply through sharing stories and talking to each other and having the kinds of connections like we have through the Leadership Summit. So people can ask themselves, what have I learned about myself during this pandemic? What have I learned about my community? What is good that I have learned? And what are the gifts and passions that have emerged, and how can we access them? And then what do I want to change in my community based on what I have learned? And so we want to launch a poll real quickly and have folks respond to that. Let me go back. I would like for you to tell me where you think you are in your community. Where do you see your community? So select one of these. Are you in crisis? Are you in discovery? Are you in resurgence in your community? So we're seeing a lot of people in discovery right now. I'll give another minute for folks to respond to this. Right now we're seeing more than half of the folks in the space right now consider themselves or their communities to be in the discovery phase. So I will share, I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results with you. So can everybody see those results? So 30% of folks feel like their communities are still in crisis. 57% of us say that we're in the discovery phase, that we're maybe starting to recognize some of those gifts that are coming out of the COVID issue. And then 13% of us feel like we're in resurgence, that we are really starting to become intentional about how to move together in how to use the resources and the gifts that have arisen. So thank you for that poll. And to that poll, of course, and when we're talking in our communities, we have to recognize that there are no right or wrong answers to this, that we may actually see ourselves in different places in our communities. And even within our own communities, people may see themselves in different places because we are all coming at it from different perspectives. But if we can begin to recognize the connections that are that are arising through story, then we can ask ourselves these questions that we talked about earlier and then pose these questions to others. And so what we really want to do now is break into a breakout room and ask ourselves some of these questions. What have I learned about myself during the pandemic? We can ask those questions. What have I learned about my community, both good and bad? What gifts and passions have emerged for me and others, and how can we use those gifts and passions to become more resilient? And so we're going to go into some breakout rooms, some discussion rooms, and give you an opportunity for about 15 to 20 minutes to discuss some of these questions and to meet some other people. This is an opportunity for us to build some networks and to consider this asset-based approach to crisis. We're going to discuss what you can do in your communities to use the gifts that are there. And so our guiding questions in these breakout rooms are going to be the following, and you will have facilitators in the breakout rooms that will bring these questions up to you again. So our guiding questions will be, what has changed during this time that you don't want to lose? What are some assets that you wish your community had when COVID came? And then what can we do in our communities to use local gifts and assets to put the people who live there at the center of our response efforts, both as actors, so people as actors, and as beneficiaries of the response efforts. So people can both provide response and be the beneficiaries of response. So those are going to be our guiding questions. And so we will move into those breakout rooms, and I think Jacqueline is going to take care of doing that for us.
Hey, for those of you who are still here, we're going to form a breakout room right here. So welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with those questions just so we can see them. And I'll try my best to kind of chart responses as well so that we can see that. Is that large enough print for everybody? Okay. So what we can start by doing is just think about question 1 and 2. So maybe something that's changed during this time that you do not want to lose, and something that you might have needed that you wish your community had when COVID came that maybe you didn't have. So think about that for a second. I'll give us some time to just think. Feel free to put your response in the chat while you're thinking and kind of just formulate your answer, and then we can go around and we'll do an introduction where everyone introduces themselves, where you're joining from today, and a 1-sentence response to one of these 2 first questions. Shayna went ahead and put in the chat something that she doesn't want to lose, that she feels has kind of strengthened during this time, which is the sense of collaboration. Sorry, Shannon, I'll give you a chance to say it yourself too. I like seeing these.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine.
So I think we're kind of starting to reflect a little. I'd love to go around and just do some introductions. And I can start. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm the program coordinator at Brushy Fork. I'm really excited to see y'all's faces this morning. Something that I don't want to lose, I agreed when I saw Vanda and Shayna's answers coming in, the not losing that sense of collaboration. I completely resonated with that. I feel like people have been really willing to work with one another during this time and work maybe with people that they wouldn't normally have worked with. And also that slower pace of life. I think that it has kind of required that we slow down a little bit. So who would like to go next?
I can go next. I'm Travis Witt. I'm with Kentucky River Foothills in Richmond. And really the thing that's changed the most for me since COVID is just kind of the awareness of the social issue. Like I've never seen a social issue that is this all pervasive and all like, there's so many other things that if we could just focus this much attention on, we could really do some, you know, positive things. But I like the coordination of, I mean, everyone across the board. You can't have a conversation without talking about it. You can't watch TV for 10 minutes without someone mentioning it. It's like just really interesting how all pervasive it is.
Thanks for sharing, Travis, and welcome. Shayna, you had unmuted yourself too. Do you want to go next?
Oh, yeah. Just to piggyback on what Travis said, you know, I think many of us, depending on where we work and the people that we associate with, many of the things that are being highlighted as a result of the pandemic, we were already aware of. So if nothing else, the pandemic has made issues, concerns, and disparities that many members of our community face more of, if you will, it's been brought to the forefront to the general public more. So those of us who are service providers, we were already aware of some of the difficulties that individuals face, but now it's blatantly obvious to the general public. So those that are not in the know.
I'll go next. I live on a small family farm, and so it's made me appreciate exactly where I live. It's made me appreciate my place more. It's made me slow down and appreciate that. And one thing about the community, and we live in a very small rural community, our people have had to reach down and grab hold of their bootstraps and become creative in order to make their businesses succeed. And so I've loved that. And so now that they've kind of stepped out of what was traditional into a new way of doing things, I'm not sure that they'll go totally back to traditional because they've seen that there's a new way to do things. And I love that.
I'll go next. I'm Dr. Tony Sweat, and I'm with Gear Up SOAR, Partners for Education. And I think the one thing that I don't want to lose is that I've had to rely working from home more on my team members. And so we're in constant communication trying to figure this thing out as a team and try to establish best practices and things of that nature. So I think we have actually, the distance have made us become closer, if that makes sense. So, you know, I definitely think I can benefit from that moving forward, is just to rely on my team more.
Oops, I was muted. Thanks for sharing that, Tony. I appreciate it. And I also kind of feel like that as well. Working with our team at Brushy, we've been in kind of constant communication with one another. Keith, welcome. And Sue, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Hi, my name is Sue. I work in Columbus, Ohio with a organization of religious women, the Dominican Sisters of Peace, but we have ministries in 7 states, some including in Kentucky, also rural Kansas, but also in some other places. I think the challenge has been, although there's 2 of us who prior to March, made regular visits to each of our ministries. That includes retreat centers, schools, ecology/farm centers, healthcare centers in terms of a long-term care facility. The communication method, as you've all said, has been so very different. And also all of our ministries are not-for-profit organizations. Many of them, their main mission is to have people come together, you know, for various reasons, whether that's at a retreat center, at a school, at an ecological farm setting, that kind of thing. So it's been really challenging when they have each had to change their mode of action. And they're small organizations for the most part, not our schools, but the other places are small. So helping people kind of, they're each kind of their own community, having to get over, let's look at things in new ways and let's try to communicate in new ways.
And what are some of the ways that they've been able to kind of gather still without, you know, maybe gathering in the same way that they were before?
Retreat centers have tried to move to virtual offerings, but they're small places. It's not like they have an IT department or a tech department to help them do that. So that's been challenging for them. Our ecology/farm centers, one of which is in St. Catherine, Kentucky, one is here in Columbus, Ohio, one is in rural Kansas. That's a different kind of thing. They have to have their staff continue to do the work, but how do you bring the people in to still kind of learn some things or get away from things in that environment, which is what they've been there for. But the things with the crops and the animals have to go on. So that's been a challenge. The schools are their own thing. The schools are in various cities. We have 4 high schools, some in urban settings, some in kind of medium settings. So that varies. And our 2 healthcare centers are mainly for long-term care settings for religious folks. Lay persons can go to our place in Kentucky as well, but they've been closed, appropriately so, and have closed very safely since March to outside visitors and things like that. So that's kept people safe, but people have had to get creative about what can we do to personalize the daily experience of those long-term care residents. Lucky or not, some of them have memory issues. So that's either good or bad. Maybe they aren't aware that a pandemic is going on, but a lot of times then they are aware, why doesn't my person come to visit me like they used to? You know, so they might not be aware of the big picture, but they're aware of that smaller picture. So it's kind of a whole range of things. It's interesting.
That does sound very interesting, like a wide range of ways that people are needing to pivot or things that are changing. So far, we've kind of said that this pandemic has overall raised kind of an awareness of folks of other issues and also issues that have kind of been made worse through by the pandemic. Also, it's made us a little bit more appreciative of maybe slowing down and our community and those around us, and has maybe changed our communication and the way we've pivoted, as I think a lot of us have pivoted a lot to online. And Keith and Yoko, if you guys would, either of you would like to introduce yourself and respond to one of these questions about something that's changed that you don't want to lose, or something that you wish your community had needed that maybe you didn't have when the pandemic first came.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was in another meeting and just came in. So things we would like to keep same since the new way of doing things during the pandemic. Is that the gist of that question?
Yeah, maybe something that's changed that you want to keep doing even when we aren't living in a pandemic. I think some things that people have mentioned already are kind of that people have become just more aware of other issues. That's been one. Vanda mentioned that she's been more appreciative of her place, and Tony mentioned that he's been kind of communicating more deeply with his team. But is there anything that's changed for you that you want to hold on to?
We were already doing a lot of Zoom. I work in a wide territory of Appalachia, and so had to use that a lot and really missed the opportunity to go meet people face to face. But just been able to do a lot of connecting that way by Zoom, and attend meetings that I wouldn't have been able to attend because of distance, or 2 meetings in the same day and that were far apart, and that kind of thing. So yes, I just came from a Appalachian Studies class at University of Kentucky to Berea in 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's a really fast travel time. And Yoko mentioned in the chat, and Yoko, I know that you said that you were kind of doing a couple other things, so it's okay if you don't want to come off mute or anything, but you mentioned in the chat that thinking progressively and continuing to plan for the future, even though those plans may change, and being okay with being flexible and finding positives in those challenges, which I think that we all can resonate with being adaptable and flexible during this time.
I'm guessing a lot of our organizations will do more hybrid type meetings, as we've seen people be able to join us that would never have before because of distance and logistical issues.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Keith. Now I kind of want to pivot us to think about, we have about 5 more minutes left, so maybe we can go popcorn real fast. What can we do in our communities to put the community and the people who live there at the center of responding to COVID? So both in terms of them using their gifts in that response and in meeting their needs with that response. So maybe these are things that are already happening in your community or ideas that you have to center folks in your community. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Or maybe tell a story about how you've seen somebody step up and include folks in the community in some sort of initiative.
I'd like to respond to that, Jacqueline. As I said, we live here in Manchester, Kentucky, which is a very rural area, and internet, even connection, is spotty and sometimes not available. So that has made it extremely difficult for some of our people to even participate in a Zoom meeting. But I want to commend PRTC. I don't work for them, but anyway, it's People's Rural Telephone Corporation. But anyway, they're coming into our community, bringing a very fast broadband service. And we're looking forward to that because that's going to allow these people that live here in Manchester to connect with the world. So that is something when Donna said that maybe people from Appalachia have been, they haven't been connected. And so, when you're shut in your house because of COVID and you're restricted from going to Walmart and get your groceries, and then all of a sudden you don't have access to internet, which a lot of our children do not have internet connections. So that's a real problem here, but we're working on it daily. So that's yeah.
That is wonderful. Tony?
I'd just like to add, continue to educate our people on the COVID virus. Some people think it's a political thing, and just it's not that people are uninformed. A lot of times they're misinformed. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So as educators, we have to continue to educate them and filter through some of the foolishness that has been placed out there.
Thanks for sharing that, Tony. I've been really inspired by some of the nonprofits in town have really thought creatively about ways to engage volunteers in ways that maybe they hadn't in the past. And I think that is definitely a way to center, the community in using their gifts and also in meeting their needs, because there's folks in the community who are receiving some services that they need volunteers to help get into the community. Does anybody else have a story that they'd like to share about how folks are stepping up or how people are centering community members in response?
Early in the pandemic, I don't know if this fits or not, but the school systems in Oneida and not county schools, Pine Knot, and we're short on a lot of cleaning and sanitary supplies, and So churches in Tennessee and Kentucky, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship churches, asked their churches to go to their maintenance closets and all those cleaning supplies that they're not able to use right now because they're not meeting. If they would ask them if they would, make a collection of those and bring it to those schools, and they did a pretty good job of stocking up the schools just from their unused cleaning supplies in their closets.
That's definitely an example of folks stepping up to fit that need. We have about 45 seconds left. Does anybody else have any ideas that they want to throw out there to share with folks?
Keith, I would like to know what agency that you work with.
I'm with Together for Hope Appalachia. It's poverty alleviation through asset-based community development with Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. There are 5 regions, and it's the nationwide. It's the 301 counties of persistent poverty in the U.S. designated by the USDA. And I'm interested in your organization.
Thank you. Yes, I think I've met you before or seen you before, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I'm interested in all of you. Working with you any way I can.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen as folks come back into the main meeting. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. So I should probably share my screen again for the reports. Okay, so we want to have quickly some reports, and I may be stepping on Daniel's toes. I think he may be supposed to be facilitating this.
It's okay. I used to be in a dance group, so I got some tough toes.
Sorry about that, Daniel.
It's perfectly fine. So we're just going to go around really quickly and hear from someone from each group briefly about a couple of ways people in their communities are responding to COVID. And so we'll start off with breakout room number 1, which was Andrea's group. So someone from them, feel free to reach out and report.
Austin, would you like to go ahead and report?
I can. Sorry, upon switching over, I've lost my notes document.
Oh no, oh no.
That's fine. I can do it if you would like me to.
Could you?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. So I loved how on the same page we were talking about the first question, which was what changed during this time that we don't want to lose. And all of us, I think, agreed that the sense of community and sense of togetherness, how people really stood up for each other. And it almost feels like we're these super tight-knit communities right now, and also we were talking about this sense of compassion, like a heightened sense of compassion. One aspect that I guess Angie and I were kind of piggybacking off of each other was sense of compassion and flexibility in the workspace, which, we were all so, I guess, tight in these deadlines that we had and the need to perform and show up, but we see an increased sense of just patience and grace from our supervisors, from our coworkers and teammates. Another point that was brought up was the incentive in our spirits to shop local. And Austin had brought up a really great point. What was once kind of seen a fad, right? Of like, we have to shop local. Now we actually realize how important shopping locally is in our communities. So realizing, making that intentional choice of, I'm not going to go to Walmart for every single thing that I need to buy. Let me see what's available around me. Or instead of, cooking dinner, like what is a really nice mom and pop restaurant in my hometown that I can actually support. So we kind of had that conversation I guess, around our local economy. And going to the question asking what can we do in our communities to put the community and the people who live here at the center of responding to COVID. Some things that we touched on were learning to really listen and actively use feedback from the community, communication being key. So you can't communicate too much, you can't be transparent enough. Yeah, you can. So being very transparent, providing as much information as you can. One point that Amy was bringing up was, you know, there's lots of people in our community, you'll be surprised that they don't know where you can find COVID testing or whether it's free or not, or what's the nearest one to you. So stuff like that. So creating, I put here in the notes, it's in the notes here saying a focal or a single platform for distribution on information to make things consistent. So yeah, that's about things that we were talking about, and we had a good conversation.
Well, that sounds absolutely wonderful, and thank you for sharing out, Andrea. Next is my own breakout group, which we didn't quite get to the third question, but that is on me for the mismanagement of time, and we just really got into talking to each other, which I really enjoyed. So Sandy will be reporting out from my group, I believe. Sandy, whenever you're ready.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. So what are the things that we don't want to lose when the pandemic is over? And a lot of that was the use of Zoom meetings and alternative ways of connecting. We all loved that. There was a lot of re-emphasis on the food, as particularly for children and our seniors, and this emphasis on growing your own, realizing how important and essential food is to community, and we'd like to keep that going, that emphasis going, and then just again that whole value of how much we love our communities and we love our home. You know, that it's not something that is we don't think about anymore, that we actually can identify and express that as an important value to us. In question number 2, some of the things that we wish our community had when COVID came had to do around the infrastructure, the internet access, and the equipment, hard drives and hardware necessary for our youth and children to transition to remote schools. But we also put a big cap on that and called it digital equity, because it's, you know, it would have been, I'm grateful, personally, I'm grateful for the amount of technology we had to be able to, those of us who could transition to doing Zoom and to participating and still being able to work from home. But imagine what it would have been like if everybody had had that, if everybody had had the hardware, if everybody had had affordable broadband, and if everybody knew how to use it. Other things that we were talking about, we wish our communities had better roads that were in good condition so that folks would not be isolated. The ability to know what to do. You know, it was just seems like it was just so difficult to figure out, you know, what exactly protects us from the virus and we should be doing to protect others. And the skill set necessary to be able to use what tools we had, such as Zoom and those types of things. And then Chase in our group really pointed out this disbelief, or this, you know, we really wish that we didn't have this, you know, this, you know, well, the virus is for everybody else but us, and that it's not for, you know, it's not, that it only attacks certain people, and I'm not one of those people. And we just really wish we had a better sense of understanding of the fact that if you were human, you could catch this virus, and then acted accordingly. So that was our good little group. I enjoyed it tremendously.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy. Next is breakout group number 3 with Donna.
Yeah, and Sandy Grisham was going to report out for us, or Vaughn was, but I'm not sure if they lost their notes or not. So did you guys?
Donna?
Uh-huh.
What we said?
I could pull up the notes that I took real quickly. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that. Um, now we'll share this. Can you read that, Vaughn?
Yeah,
And I will go down to question 3, which is what we were going to report on. So
yes. We talked about that we could organize our churches to continue a non-traditional role, that we could encourage various philanthropists and community foundations to invest in the organizations that reach the community, that manage the funds and know where they're needed. There can be small grassroots organizations that know how to respond to challenges. They're all good ideas. Paying people that we know, paying people who've been laid off to fill the gap in distribution of resources. And it says, for example, churches pay mileage reimbursement to deliver food to remote students. Then to involve the students, and this was something that happens in a university town, to involve the students in the university and college towns to reach out to the community. And then Donna had an example there that they have students who serve as tutors for students who are learning at home.
yeah. And then maybe just real quickly, because other folks went over this, what's changed during this time that people didn't want to lose was virtual outreach, that the fact that we can reach more than ever. So we're hearing that across these reports, I think. That grocery stores have developed this service that will allow us to call in and pick up items at the curbside, so that we're not, it's just more convenient and we're not risking ourselves. Churches have gone to Facebook and internet services. This is really helpful for seniors. And if we continue that for when we're going back to normal, the whole community just seems to be more sensitive to helping others. There are new connections and ways of organizing local food value chains that support local farmers and keep food in the community. So those local food systems are seeing some benefit from this. More people are making an effort to maintain connections and reaching out. Families are doing Zoom meetings across the nation, so there are virtual reunions of people who may not see each other for long periods of time. And if churches have funding and support, they're actually providing things like cool spaces for local farmers to store food for use during food banks, or providing internet service or things like that. So those were some of the things that we didn't want to lose. That after I heard other people talking about that, I didn't want to spring that on you at the last minute, Vaughn, but I think those are
Good idea.
Good ideas to share. So I'll stop sharing my screen now so we can go on to the next group.
All right, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Vaughn. It looks like next is Erica's group for breakout number 4.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So the major theme that really kind of ran through our group discussion was communication. And we realized that a lot of relationships have strengthened within communities, both from your neighbors and just checking in with everybody, seeing how people are doing, to those virtual communities also, where we're online more with each other through Zoom or Google Meets and Hangouts. And it's really starting to strengthen a lot of virtual and in-person communities. And we hope that really doesn't change. We've also recognized that mental health's become more of a priority in the workplace for everybody. And it's becoming, a real asset for a lot of people to lean into those mental health resources that organizations are starting to offer to help people cope with this. So we hope that also doesn't change. We also recognize that there's been more of a willingness to share available resources within communities that may not have always been the case, but we've been put into a new reality where that's become much more prevalent, and we're really hoping that that continues. A couple of things that we wish that our community had done whenever COVID came was a little bit more efficient ways to check in with community members who may need some assistance or help during COVID, because there were some discussion around how difficult it may have been to know whether your neighbors or anyone else in your community had, needed something, any kind of help or whatsoever. And that kind of led to a little bit of a better understanding also of the public health and the validity of some of these public health procedures that we were talking about. And then the final line of questioning that we had around what our communities can kind of like help people out with as they're responding to COVID. We did note that businesses are starting to collaborate and reestablish connections in order to help create change in some of our communities, and hoping to see like bigger networks of that continue when we get back to some sense of normal. And we're also want to examine how difficult it's been to change behavior and having the community as a whole engaging in the entire learning perspective from different stakeholders.
All right, thank you, Jason. It looks like next is breakout number 5 with Jamie. Jamie, someone from your group?
All right, so for number 1, what has changed during this time that you don't want to lose? The main thing was just community, people taking care of each other more than they did prior to COVID. And another big thing was the resources that we have now, like, I guess, places realizing you don't have to go into the grocery store. We can just do it for you. We can deliver your groceries, or you can just pick them up. And the ability to work from home, like realizing it's not necessary to be in the office, and people are grateful to spend more time with their family and pets, but still being able to be productive. Also, Monica had mentioned that this has brought a lot of light to inequalities, and that people are speaking up for a lot of injustices. Some things that we needed that we wish our communities had when COVID came: the levels of testing necessary. I know a lot of rural areas did not have access to testing the way that more urban areas did. Internet and the resources to be able to do online school or online work is something that not everyone had, and a plan was the biggest thing. Most communities did not really have a plan on how to handle a pandemic. And then lastly, what can we do in our communities to put the community and the people who live there at the center of responding to COVID? Our group said creating a plan on how to respond, bringing businesses together to start relieving the community, asking the people that are most impacted what they need specifically, providing mental support for our youth, and prioritizing self-care, and making information accessible for those who don't have access, like homeless people or those without internet or TV or social media. And that's my notes.
Thank you, Jamie. Travis's group?
My group will kind of be a team effort for sharing, starting with Terry.
Yes, and I think we're just going to, thanks Travis, I think we're just going to share on number 1 and number 3. That's where we spend our most of our time, and Rachel will share on number 3. A lot of the similar things that other groups have mentioned. We did spend a little bit of time talking about Zoom and how that helps us thinking about meeting differently. Peter made the great comment that he's not going to travel several hours for an hour-long meeting anymore, that we've learned how to use Zoom effectively. But then also that sometimes we're being smart about whether we need to meet or not to avoid the dreaded Zoom fatigue, that we can maybe work a little bit smarter rather than being on Zoom all day. Also mentioned just being creative with how we do community events now. That has been a wonderful thing that we can maybe continue. Also, many people are wanting to connect back to the land and connect back to natural resources because of COVID, and we hope that that stays. And then also just I think many people have a newfound appreciation for human connection. I'll use a quick example that the Strategic Initiatives team did a socially distanced team meeting today. So Andrea, Erica, and our other team members, we saw each other in person today, and it was amazing how wonderful that was. So hopefully we will all continue to appreciate that. And I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Hi, okay. So concrete actions that we can take, we talked about making plans, like having plans already, pre-planning to figure out what works and what doesn't work, to talk about things that maybe didn't work in, at the beginning of the pandemic to what is working. So really just laying out really finite plans. Figure out common goals amongst the community members. We've been seeing a lot of division, especially around, the safety of wearing masks, or, people not wanting to go into stores if they require masks. So really just trying to figure out a common goal for the entire community to kind of work towards. Accepting that this is a time of change for everyone, that everyone's uncomfortable, that everyone's going through something, and really just being accepting that everybody is going to be at different places and different stages during this time, because, and it's really, I think it's really great during Zoom, because even at the summit right now, people have their animals in their Zoom shots, you can hear children in the background sometimes in Zoom meetings. So just accepting that it's all going to be different for everybody. And then just trying to engage young people, using their ability to multitask, to pick up technology really quickly, and maybe trying to engage them at a younger than, say, high school, like maybe getting middle schoolers involved in their community, and doing things that they can, that maybe ask, I don't know, what we said, maybe just trying to engage them more fully into their community at a younger age. And that's
Right.
it.
Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, Jacqueline's group. We're running a little bit over, but we do have a couple of minutes for Jacqueline's group to share.
No worries. I'm muted.
No, you're good, Janet. You are unmuted. We could hear you. Now we can't, though.
Mute me. Okay. In our group, we discussed a lot of things that other participants shared. We primarily focused on question 1 and number 3. And really to reiterate a lot of the excellent points that have already been made. For question 1, we really appreciate that there's a greater sense of awareness of social issues and disparities that many of the individuals within our communities face. We've seen an increase in collaborative efforts. Many of us have a greater appreciation for place and community. We really identify more with the spaces that we occupy. Some of us, in our ability to work from home, we found that there is a greater reliance on team communication. So communication is easier. However, you find that you are really relying more on communicating with various components and aspects of your team. We have also noticed that we have changed our mode of action by being able to incorporate technology and utilizing virtual options. In some ways, we are better able to be proactive as opposed to reactive. But along with that, we do recognize that many segments of the communities that we live and work in, that internet access is something that many individuals still do not have availability to. So even though we are utilizing technology more and we are incorporating virtual options, we need to make sure that everyone has access to the same ability to utilize these technological and virtual options. So we really hope to see that communities, cities, counties, regions, and districts, that they start to focus more on providing internet access across the board, so that we do not have people that are left out because they don't have the ability to participate in virtual options. I think that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you so much. And now I think we are going to turn it over to Jacqueline. unless I am mistaken.
Right, so I think now we're going to go around just popcorn style, and anybody who wants to share what leadership opportunities that have arisen for you, maybe because of the pandemic or during this time. And another question that we have up here is, how could we maintain some of the good responses that are helping our communities thrive? Van shared that the People's Rural Telephone Cooperative and is putting in broadband in Manchester. So that, I think, is a good response to people not having internet access that is continuing on even after the pandemic. And we can kind of think about these. You can feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and go for it.
Is it okay if I start with one?
Perfect. Go ahead, Austin.
So one of the really interesting leadership opportunities that kind of came up for me is I'm also the newest, sorry, a little bit black there. Along with the being a new member of my organization, I'm also the newest member of a local board that works on environmental advocacy stuff. And that board is mostly 60 or 70 and above. And so this year we've decided to do one of our events entirely online. And so as the newest person on the board and the youngest by probably about 30 years, I've kind of been able to step into the leadership role of helping them deal with things like creating videos, using Facebook effectively, updating their websites, and figuring out how to kind of move that group into this generation and making sure everybody knows how important it is that we as a board and we as an organization are able to use that kind of information, both during COVID and once we get out of it. And so I feel like it's been a really interesting leadership opportunity because you're not only doing it now, but it's something that they're going to be able to use for forever, that continuing on. And so that's been really cool. And I feel like COVID really gave them the only push that could have happened for them to actually want to do that, because it's something that we've mentioned a couple of times, but there's never ever been a reason to.
Thanks for sharing, Austin.
Hi, this is Angie. I think one of the opportunities for me has been learning to be a leader and a supervisor at a distance. You know, you can't just walk around and say hi to people, and there is so much that you can learn about your teams and your coworkers just from looking at their faces when they come into the office in the morning and getting that first cup of coffee. And so learning how to connect with my team virtually and to lead virtually has been an interesting experience.
Angie, do you have any tips for others who are leading or supervising at a distance now?
I guess what has worked for me is because we couldn't have our morning coffee, we have scheduled weekly coffee chats at 8:30 in the morning where we don't deal with work. We just catch up with each other and say hello and drink coffee together. And I have also started relying very heavily on, we use all the Google platforms, so Google Chat. You know, I have Google Chat open with my team all day long. And so we have learned that instead of, you know, yelling at the office next door or just going next door, that instead we can use Google Chat and doing those Google video calls as well.
Hi, hi, this is Cheyenne. We have been looking at ways to get our board and our staff to think about models of behaving and believing and doing in the future that are not models that we used in the past. So, you know, we believe that it's time for our neighborhoods and our communities to look at different ways of forming community and not hanging on to this concept that, oh, the virus is going to be gone and we'll go back to normal. I don't I don't think we are going to go back to normal. I think now is a really rich time to invent and imagine and create a new way of being in community. I don't know if that makes sense. It's still it's a struggle. It's evolving for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheyenne.
Hi, Rachel Boyd. I just want to piggyback off of what Cheyenne said. It's kind of like a leadership opportunity is for people who, like for myself, is thinking outside of the box of having events. How can we rethink about the normal way we used to do things? I don't personally feel like there's going to be a go back to normal for a long time. And it's really scary. But if you evaluate how you're thinking about it and go, oh, wait a minute, these are different. This is an opportunity to do something different completely, to celebrate. Like in our breakout group, I was talking about Veterans Day. You know, for an example, for Main Street, there's usually a parade. Well, this year, there's not going to be a parade. And so how do we thank our veterans? Well, we make a Facebook video. We get the community together to submit 10 seconds of saying thank you. And we put it all together and we put it out on our community Facebook page and share it with everybody. Just, it's a great, I feel like for me, I love thinking of new ways to do different things. And so it's just been this really great opportunity for my weird and kooky ideas to actually get them out and have people either say, yeah, that's great, how do we help? Or say, hey, how about this instead? Or it's just a really great opportunity for people to think outside of the box that normally would never want change or never like change, because now they're forced to change. And so, I don't know, I think it's just a great opportunity for that creative thinker.
Thanks, Rachel. And that is a really creative idea, making that Facebook video.
Please use it.
And that
sorry.
Share ideas. Oh yes, Shayna.
I think Rachel makes a very excellent point in that we've been anticipating returning to our normal, but everything about ourselves, our communities, society as a whole has changed. And I think some of the difficulty is that we are trying to be people that we really cannot be. And as Rachel pointed out, the change is difficult. And I think that in some ways people are resistant to incorporating new ideas and suggestions like she discussed, because we feel like we are casting aside what we used to do before. So change is not fun, change is difficult, but I think that looking at it from this perspective will make an adjustment and us moving forward a lot easier. Who we were in March, those individuals simply do not exist. And I think it's a disservice for us to kind of long for getting back to something that we are never going to be able to get back to.
Thank you, Shayna.
You're welcome.
And you're right, we are different. I think that we've all learned new skills and we've become more adaptable in a lot of cases. That we've heard that from our breakout rooms. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Rachel said something about the veterans and stuff. There is like, my name's Susan Green. I'm with St. Vincent Mission. And Rachel has a point, but there's another little thing that it came up when she said it, that the veterans are some that can't afford a whole lot of stuff where I'm living. So some of us try to make little meals and drop it to their doorstep, knock on the door and step back and tell them, say, we got you some stuff here for your dinner and stuff like that. So that would be another good thing for the veterans, to thank them and stuff like that for giving their time to us. I think that would be a good idea to try to spread a little bit further too.
Thanks, Susan. That's a great idea. Jan and Mindy, I saw that you shared in the chat that folks have been looking at the Grayson Gallery as a physical place to meet as well as to head up alternative ways to communicate with others and share events. I think that that's wonderful too.
Hey, wait a minute. That's some good ideas.
All right. Does anyone else have anything to add to this conversation? If not, I will hand it over to Donna, and Donna will, she's going to do the next part, which is the Leadership Award.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Pull my trick again of not being unmuted. So, well, so every year, if you've been to a previous leadership summit, you'll know that each year we do what we call the John B. Stevenson Award for Community Service in the region. And Brushy Fork has done this for more than 2 decades. This award recognizes a person or people who have provided exemplary service to communities in the Appalachian region. It was in 2012 that we named this award in honor of Brushy Fork's founder, John Stevenson. And the reason that we named this award in honor of him, obviously, is that he's our founder, but we also base this award on his values that inform our work even today. And it's also based on his vision for the future of leadership in the mountains. So recipients of this award demonstrate the following values. They honor the voice and the vision of local people in the work that they do in their communities. They uphold equality by asserting the kinship of all people, so they see the value of all people. They engage community members in mutual learning and mutual growth and service in the community. They provide learning, innovation, and results through hands-on work. They encourage mindful living. They have a zest for learning, and they show concern for others. So, the person to whom Brushy Fork is awarding the 2020 John B. Stevenson Award excels at engaging community members in efforts to improve the place that they call home. Whenever people mention the community's accomplishments, this person humbly refers to the efforts of the people who work with her. And she asserts that one person can't do this work alone. And she's right. It's sometimes, it's often true that you can't do this work alone, but it really takes one person to ignite the spark in the community, and to ignite that spark in another person and another person and another person, and on and on. And so this year's award recipient shines the light of her leadership efforts on many, many other people. And this year's award recipient is Vanda Rice from Clay County, Kentucky, down in Manchester. I saw a quote recently attributed to Anne Frank that Vanda had shared on Facebook, where, you know, all things of value are shared. But actually, no, this quote was that was attributed to Anne Frank was the following. It said, "How wonderful is it that nobody need to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world." And I would have to say that Vanda is a person who lives that quote every day in her life. She was born and raised in Clay County, Kentucky, and Vanda decided not to wait a single moment before starting to improve her home community. She was moved to do something when she heard that the community needed local action to address issues like population decline, economic hardship, and other factors that were threatening the community's vitality. She gathered with 3 friends and founded Stay in Clay, which is a volunteer organization that has made great strides in reviving the community, both in appearance and in spirit. Vanda is a strong advocate for telling the story of Clay County that may often be missed by outside media sources, that the community pulls together to get each other through rough patches, that there is great natural beauty to show the world, and that stories of resilience and the county's history are treasures unto themselves in this community. She encourages the community to embrace the real stories from the real people and to use those stories to instill a sense of community in Clay County. Through her leadership in Stay in Clay, Vanda has helped build strong partnerships in the community, and the work of these partnerships have resulted in things like downtown revitalization projects. That's included things like adding murals to the buildings, creating green spaces, and perhaps best recognized by the beautiful signs. If you ever go down into Clay County in Manchester, you'll see at the county lines and at the Welcome Center that Clay County has been designated and recognized as the land of swinging bridges. And so the work of Stay in Clay and the work that Vanda and her team have helped start have resulted in that designation. And so much of the work in Clay County can be a model for other places that are facing the same kinds of hardships that Clay County has faced. A crucial aspect of this work has been that the community efforts have included everyone. And so Vanda Rice has been a bridge builder in more ways than one in this land of swinging bridges. So on behalf of the Brushy Fork Leadership Institute, a strategic initiative of Berea College, I am extremely pleased to award Vanda Rice the 2020 John B. Stevenson Service Award. I hope this reflects a bridge to the bright future that Vanda is helping create for Clay County. So please join me in appreciating her years of community leadership. So we will all applaud with the American Sign Language applause and say thanks to Vanda. And Vanda, if you want to say anything, you're welcome to share a few words. If you'll just unmute yourself and do that. But congratulations to you, Vanda.
Oh, Donna. You know, I'm a really big talker, but when Donna came down and she announced that I was going to receive this reward, or not reward, but award. See, I'm all flustered this morning. I don't usually get awards. But I want you to know how honored and humble that I am to be the recipient of this. But as Donna said, it's not one person. And as she presented me with this beautiful painting of this swinging bridge, I thought, you know, where can I hang this in the community that everybody can go see this beautiful, beautiful piece of art? But after I saw it, I thought, no, I'm going to take it home, and so they'll just have to come and visit me. So I say the same to you. If you want to see this beautiful piece of art, my welcome mat is always out. But I want to tell you just a little bit about how we began, just a couple of minutes. But Stay in Clay actually began at Brushy Fork in 2012. It was our first time to participate there. And so for you first-time people that are attending Brushy Fork for your very first time, you will come away fired up. You will come away with fire in your bones and a passion to see change. And that's what happened to us. We came together at Brushy Fork there, and there was 4 women that came together, and we were from the same county, but we barely knew each other. But we came away with a passion to see change. We came away with a passion to see change in the world, but we needed to begin with Manchester, because Manchester is a very small rural community. We have 1,800 people in our little town and 20,000 in our entire county. But we came away with a desire to see change happen. And so as time moved on and we had the crisis happen, and if you don't do something, your town's going to die. And you'll hear the rest of our story and how things have evolved to how we became the land of swinging bridges and how other things have happened in our town. We're going to be sharing, my friend Amy, who's pictured here, my friend Amy and I will be sharing the entire story of the community development how it happened in Manchester, Kentucky, in Dr. Von Grisham's track, and that's building a local community movement. It's truly a community. It's not one person. I was just lucky enough to be the one that's presented, that has that has received this award. But I want to say to you, Donna, and to Brushy Fork has been by our side the entire step of the way. Out of 8 years, we have been able to attend Brushy Fork Leadership Summit 7 out of 10 times. And every time we come away with knowledge and learning and power and passion to go back and see things happen. So we almost consider this leadership summit as a fueling station for us to come back and work another year. So Donna and Brushy Fork, I want to say to you, thank you. I am always grateful, but I'm so humbled by this, and thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanda. And we all look forward to, those of us that are going to be in your workshop track, look forward to learning from you. So, and we're always learning from communities too. So it's a two-way street, just so everybody knows that. So thank you all. So I think Daniel is going to wrap us up for the afternoon.
Indeed. So just a gentle reminder that Block 1 workshop tracks start at 1 p.m. The links are in your participant guide, and you should have also received some emails from Eventbrite where all those links for the community sessions that can be found later. Your Block 1 workshop tracks will adjourn at 4 o'clock today and will begin at 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So you'll be going straight into your tracks tomorrow morning. There will be no prior session. Like I just said before that, the bonus session tonight at 6 p.m., Finding Balance Under Pressure with Dr. Melissa Carver. The link to that is in your participant guide. And if you have any questions at all during any time, please feel free to put those in the chat and we will do our best to help you. If there are no other announcements, I believe we are going on break.
We will go on our lunch break, but we did have a question from Jamie asking if someone could share the 3 questions from our breakouts. And what I will do is we will take that entire PowerPoint and turn it into a PDF and send it to everybody so that you will have those questions, and we'll email that out to everybody. So how's that sound? Okay, awesome. Thank you all, and see the folks who are in Block 1 tracks, we'll see you back at 1 o'clock. And if you're in Block 2 tracks, just meet us back here at 1 o'clock the next day. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.